Hey everyone, it's Adam Hergenrother. Very excited to serve you guys today for the next 30 minutes. Thank you for joining. We've got hundreds of people on the call, so I'm very excited about that. So look, today is an idea. The goal for today is to peel back the curtain a little bit and to give you guys some insight of exactly what it's going to be like to participate in the class Business Without Limits. And so we're going to take a few of the materials that we're going to be teaching in this and kind of break it down for you, then have some questions at the end for it. So I'm going to jump right in because we only have a limited amount of time today. But if you have any questions as we're doing this, feel free to throw it in the question box and we'll see it and we'll definitely answer it in that segment or certainly at the end. So a couple things I want you guys to remember. Life in general, when you're building things, mediocrity is something that a lot of us settle for, which we need to understand that we need to stop settling for this. So as I embarked in my career, and I don't know how many people know this, but up until I was about 15 years old, I was a little over 100 pounds overweight, and as a freshman in high school, I was into drugs and I was failing some classes, really your typical kind of role model student. And so one day in my life I decided to make a change. I actually came home and I started crying, and I literally had hit a wall of pain, and maybe some of you guys have been there before. And I didn't know what my life was going to look like, but here's what I did know. I was no longer going to settle for mediocrity in my life, and I was no longer going to allow somebody else to design my life for me. And so I started visualizing what I wanted my life to look like. In the next year, I lost over 100 pounds, became captain of my football team, and still struggled in school, but I managed to get A's and B's by working extremely hard. But so when people see that at a young age of what we've accomplished, and I say we because my team really makes me look good. I'm really not that great. My team is pretty amazing around me. But what we've accomplished is because I've been working on never settling in my life since that moment. So I'm 35. It's been 20 years that has happened. So life is just way too short, really, to live below your potential. And I think a lot of us just automatically default to things in life because we put limits on ourselves. And we hear that before, but let me just break that down a little bit. When you start limiting yourself on anything and your default is, oh, that person is too expensive for me, or that person is, why would they want to work on my team, or I'll never be able to go out and hire that individual, or I can never be that person. Instantly in our heads, we start limiting ourselves, and this actually becomes a habit in our lives. You got to remember, we're very habitual creatures, right? And so we like to we like to create habits. It's like you wake up and you do the similar things. Well, a lot of those habits and the defaults that we have in our lives, we didn't really create, and that can be frustrating to some people who want to make changes. And I think the reason why you guys are listening to this right now is because you want to invest into yourself, and I applaud you for that. And so it's time to, when you start living your life and breaking free of mediocrity, you've got to do that by thinking bigger, right? And we see this in Keller Williams, we see this in our market centers, we see this term thrown around there, but what does it really mean, right? And I think that we have to understand that intellectually we understand a lot of things and we can get them, but until you viscerally feel, right, until you can actually feel something change in your life, or you've walked it and experienced it, it's that aha moment where you get, and all of a sudden you go, oh wow, I get it now, right? And you viscerally feel the effects of something that is going on in your life. That's the really neat part about things. So what does it mean to think big? It means that the quality of your life is always going to be determined by the quality of questions that you ask yourself. That's never going to change, right? So when you start asking yourself a series of questions, you need to understand that really truly is nothing but thinking. So how many people took a shower this morning? Raise your hand, right? And how many people actually raised their hand right now? I can't see you guys. So, but if you think about it, when you took a shower this morning, you probably had thoughts, right? And the thoughts that you had were probably the same thoughts that you had yesterday and the day before. And research shows that 99% of the thoughts that we had were the same thoughts we had yesterday. And thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, are nothing more but thinking. It's asking yourself a question and then answering it in your own mind. By the way, who asks it and then who answers it, right? They're the same people there. So when you're doing that, you're setting in motion a series of responses designed for your mind to go out and find the answers to this. So if you're constantly asking questions of how do I get to 1 pending this month, or how do I get to 10 pendings this year, or how do I get to $100,000 in GCI, all great goals, but if you just took the same amount of energy that it takes to ask that question and say, well, how do I get to 100 this week, or 100 this day, right? And we start asking bigger questions. What's interestingly is that the answers are always around us. We have to understand that the answers have never changed. They've always been there. It's just we haven't been looking for them, right? And you hear the conversation about your prefrontal cortex and your RAS, your reticular activator system, that is out there looking for these patterns of things that you keep asking. So what does it mean to think big? It means to start asking bigger questions in your life, right? The bigger the questions you can ask, the bigger answers that you're actually going to start to get. And when you start getting these answers, it actually starts creating that habit, and it starts creating that default that we just talked about, and not allowing mediocrity to serve you in your life, allowing thinking big to serve you. And by thinking big and by stepping up into mediocrity, outside of mediocrity, and being able to push forward on there, you actually start getting answers that you never thought were possible, yet always around you. One of the questions that I ask myself every morning is, what am I missing? Right? It's what am I missing? Because I have always found, and maybe you guys have too, when I start looking for the particular thing or something that I'm searching for, it actually happens to be right there in front of me, and I just didn't see it. And so when you ask bigger questions, you start getting bigger answers. So that's ultimately what that means. So when you're starting to live out of breaking yourself free from mediocrity and starting to live big, it's purely based on the fact that you're asking yourself bigger questions. Don't box yourself in to minor questions. Right? Don't allow yourself to default to that. Don't allow yourself to get caught in fear. Don't allow yourself to have, fear that holds you back from being able to dance forward in your life. So that's the thing you've got to get through, and we're going to tackle all about and handle how you deal with this. This is just kind of a little bit of an overview for it, but think big in everything you do and make that your default. And it doesn't mean you're going to be perfect every day. It means that you could slip. That's okay. Just go back to it and start reminding yourself to ask bigger questions. So what does it really mean to when you start thinking big and creating standards in your life, right? Whatever you can do or dream, you can begin. Right? Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. It's really, the interesting thing is when you start thinking big, you start creating a model and system for your life that allows you to take advantage of that. And what I feel is standards in our lives, right? When we start putting standards in our lives, we start actually creating a bigger life. And this can be on every aspect, from physical to financial to social to spiritual to business to partnerships. Whatever it is, it's creating the standards of never allowing anybody to dumb up your life. And the reason why I left the job that I had, that was a pretty decent job in late 2006 to come into the real estate market, was purely because I felt that I had a limit on my thinking. I felt somebody had literally taken a box and put it over me, and I felt confined to not being able to be who I wanted to be and think how I wanted to think. And so that's ultimately why I got into real estate in a market that was completely crashing, and mortgage officers were dropping off, banks were failing. It was one of the worst times in terms of recessions in real estate that we'll probably ever see. Yet I allowed all the negative comments that I had received from everybody about that to fuel the fire to prove to anybody that anything is possible. And that's the really neat thing, is that when you start creating these big standards, you're thinking bigger, it's the people, the 99% of people that want to pull you down as you start to expand and grow big. You don't longer allow that to happen to you because you have your own standards, right? You're setting a goal and then you're doubling it because you're working on it. Remember, setting a goal isn't it's not about achieving that goal. Right? So if I say, look, I'm going to go do an Ironman, I'm going to do a marathon, I'm going to Tough Mudder, I'm going to hit $1 million in GCI, whatever your goal is, I'm going to lose 100 pounds or 50 pounds, or I'm going to sign up for this course, right? Whatever it is that your goal is doing, it's not about that, right? It's about who you become during that journey. It's ultimately about the training, about the daily habits that you create to allow yourself to grow and create the standards that you need that will start leaking to every aspect of your life. That's the really cool thing is, so when you have thinking big and you're creating the standards, you never allow anybody to limit your thinking, which this organization drives that home, right, every day for us, which is where we're going to drive every day when we get on together, starting next week. We're going to be driving this on a daily basis, so you're hearing this constantly to allow this to become your default of thinking big and creating standards and setting goals and setting higher goals so that you ask bigger questions to attach it. And then the key to all this is setting an actual metric that you can use as a standard measurement in your life to guide yourself for this. So when you start using numbers as a way of building a business or building your life, you've gone from an emotional person or emotional leader to somebody who's purposeful. And so what do I mean by that, right? So when you actually start using some sort of metric for yourself, you can use this on every aspect. So I'll give you some personal examples. I have metrics in my life of how many times I kiss my kids every day, right? And it's interesting. I had yesterday. I went to get in my car. I have 3 kids, one that's a month old, one that's 4.5, one that's 2.5, and so my 4.5-year-old has to sit all the way at the end of the back in our car. And they ran, and surprisingly, I don't know, they all got in the car together, which never happens, but they did. And so I was running out, and I have a standard in my life that says I always kiss my kids, tell them to be awesome today, and give them a hug, and before I leave for the morning. And I got to kiss Asher, my middle son, and my little one. My older daughter had gotten in there, and I got in my truck, and I started to leave. I literally had put it in drive, and I started pulling out. And that standard popped in my head and said, this question came up. It said, if something happened to you or something happened to her today, would you regret not getting out of your car and being lazy to do that? And the answer was yes. So I put my car in park. I jumped in the car. I walked in the back there and gave her a kiss. And it was just that moment that she could tell that I took the extra time to do that. So those are the cool things that allow us to leak into our life, that by putting standards there, allow us to grow on every single level that we can. So, and you can do this on every fashion of your life, right? From how many times you work out, how many date nights do you have, how many times you tell your kids you love you, your partner, how many business meetings you have, how many times you look at your bank accounts, how many times you look at your personal financial statement. Do you have a meeting with your family about their vision, right? These are all things we're going to go over. How many vacations do you go on each year? Numbers allow you to be purposeful on your life and not just say, hey, that's good, right? Because what does good mean, right? And if you were on my team, one of the things that people say all the time is, how you doing? And they're like, good. Well, what does good mean, right? Good can mean it's a safe word, right? So people like to use it, and it makes them feel good. But what does it really mean? Is it good meaning that you've just made $400 million today, or is good mean that, like, you're alive? So there's a lot of different standards you can start to put in your life there. And I think that's really key for all of us as we start to understand these things. And really, when the cool thing is when you actually start putting a number in your life, you actually start committing yourself. And there's a big difference between interest and commitment, right? There's a difference between interest and commitment. When you're interested in doing something, you do it only when it's convenient. When you're committed to something, you accept no excuses, only results. There's a difference between interest and commitment. When you're interested in doing something, you do it only when it's convenient. When you're committed to something, you accept no excuses, only results. That's the really cool thing is look, most of us have this, I should do this, I should do that, I should do that. You end up shoulding all over yourselves and never make anything a must in your life. Everybody on this call, right, has had something in their life. Maybe it's a vacation, maybe it's something they wanted, a material thing, maybe it's a partner that they wanted to get involved with. Whatever the case may be, when you wanted something and you made it a must, you made it happen. Regardless of the outcome, regardless of what that voice said inside your head, you closed the gap on that, right? Because you became who you had to do in order to close that. Remember, the gap between where you are and where you want to go is always going to be a who, right? And that who a lot of times is us. It's you. It's who do you have to become in order to attract the people to answer your biggest goals, right? Who do you have to become in order to, compete in an Ironman? Who do you have to become in order to have a 10 relationship? Who do you have to become to have a 10 culture, right? All these things continue to go on in your life. So that's the neat thing. So remember that if you're not committed to doing something, that's okay too. Just don't tell yourself that you're going to do it, because you keep training yourself to leak into your life of allowing yourself to say one thing and not do it. So that's a really important thing that I think that we all have to remember there. The other thing is we are all still trying to get something from life. You have to understand that life is not something that you get. Life is something that you experience. It's a journey, right? We're all a spiritual being having a monophysical experience, and therefore, if experiences are what we're after, all the physical, positive, and negative experiences are all part about who they shape us in our world. They shape us into who we become, who our kids become, who our partners become, the people around us become. And so the journey is what it is. And so therefore, if that's the case, then why don't we go out there and embrace all the experiences that we can have that we're committed to. We're committed to moving forward and building a business. We're committed to being bigger than this, and we're setting the standards for that. purely because we want the experience for it. It's not the end goal that you're after. It's the fact of the experience of going through there is what you're truly looking for. And that's the fulfillment factor, right? That's the factor that's going to come in there and do this. So how do you stick to your standards, right? Define your standards. Who do you want to be? What do you want your life to look like? And you have to set standards around that vision. We're going to go into one class we're teaching all about the future self, which is really cool. Number two is put those standards in your calendar, right? If it's not scheduled, it's not real. I had a friend who I convinced to do an Ironman with us, and he texted me a couple days ago, and he said he was literally shaking when he hit the enter button on his command for signing up. But once he committed, then he's like, then I've got to get a coach, I've got to do these things. It just set the motions forward going for him. And so remember, when we're stuck, right? When we're stuck in business, you have to keep breaking it. You have to keep pushing it forward. You have to find a way to never give up. When you can't run, you walk. And when you can't walk, you crawl. If you can't crawl, drag yourself along. It's when we stop moving forward is when we start moving backwards. And this can become a vicious or virtuous cycle, and you get to decide. That's the really neat thing. So when you're stuck, find a way to break it. Find a way to move forward. Find a way to do it. And here's this other thing. When you're in this moment, right, when you're stuck there, and maybe you've hired a couple of buyer's agents, you're hired an EA, and it hasn't worked out, and every time it just seems easier to go back to yourself because you're reliant on I doing this, or maybe you've mastered a couple hires and you're trying to get out of the actual business. We'll walk you through every step of that, whether you're an individual agent or you built a team, on what it's like to truly remove yourself from production. The interesting thing is just like it's very hard to go out there and make a step to go out and hire your first person, I find that it's even more challenging for big teams for people to stop and step out of production, even though that's their goal. It's because they've created this identity that's so close to them that in order for them to give that up, they feel like they're giving up their business. Well, the reality is people that get to that level, like you guys, right, when you get to that level, it's not that you just stop, or else you wouldn't have that option. So what the cool thing is when you actually give up that piece, you go out there and you find a way to grow even more. You train more, you grow yourself more, you read a book in the middle of the day because that's your job now becomes to stay one step ahead of everybody else in your organization so that your entire leadership lid increases. That becomes your job. So we walk you through that thought process. Remember, 90% of success is psychology, 10% is just mechanics. If you're going to go out there and try to set a resolution to lose weight, well, there's plenty of model systems tracking people, YouTube videos, whatever you want to figure out how to lose weight. So why don't people do it? It's because of the emotional thinking around it, right? And so psychology about this, of walking yourself from I to we to they, in what Gary's added in his most recent book, theirs, right? How do they do it? Like theirs, they own it. Those are 4 different distinct leadership personalities and leadership behaviors that aren't easy to go through. And so the really awesome part is can you become the person that you need to be able to walk yourself mentally through that path in order to take yourself in your business to gain that experience of what it's like to do it. And people may say, well, I love being in real estate. Well, great, that's awesome. Then you'll insert yourself in it whenever you want to, but don't be a slave to it. And that's the neat thing. The business principles of things is first who, then what. The majority of us just go out there and first we go, well, I'm going to go do it. And then when you get addicted to the income that comes from that, you get addicted to the identity that happens with that, you get addicted to the rhythm that you're in from that. All of those things start becoming part of that process. And so if you first go out there and first who, then what, Jim Collins talked about in Good the Great heavily. And when you do that, you actually start being very purposeful on building your business, and that should be a standard in your life, right? It's first who, then what. And if the first who is you, then that's the first standard we're going to work on. And we're going to give you the models and systems on how to do this. Everything that we've worked through and we've put through our team, we're going to do that as well too. And then you have to reflect that in your calendar. We're going to break open my calendar of what it looks like, everything from 4:18 in the morning until our burst of energy that we work. I mean, literally, my 8:30 to 11:30 is a burst for me. 11:30 to 2 is gym, meditation, eating. Then from 2 to 4:30 is another burst. And if I can't everything I need to be done and during that time, I just have the wrong people around me. So it's part of understanding how you get there, and we're going to walk people through there. What I found is teaching a one-day class was awesome, and I love it. It's just that it's the repetitive nature of each week. If we can drill that into people, then I've done, our team has done our job to be able to go out there and serve the greater people, who then can go out there and leak that in everybody else's life. And then putting those standards into a tracking system for yourself as well, right? We have to understand that the tools, the sales reports, the activity trackers, P&Ls. There's a whole section on this in terms of P&Ls as well. We're going to break it down, what that should look like, what you should be looking for. Look, I don't love looking at numbers every single day, and so we start giving the models and systems of what you need to look for and what things, so you can look at it within 5 to 10 minutes and be very clear on how your organization. Remember, numbers tell a story. So when you're using a 411 with somebody, or a future self, which we go over, or some sort of accountability session, if you're not tracking a number with the person, then it ends up becoming an emotional conversation, and something like this, right? It's like, well, hey Chris, how was your day? It was great, awesome, perfect. Well, our goal was to get, 3 pendings last week, and how'd we do? Well, it's coming, it's great, we had a really good time, it was gonna do it, and we have got some things rolling, and it's gonna happen. You're like, oh great, that sounds awesome. So we should probably see a 3 by the end of the week, maybe even see 4, right? And then you just get going and you get caught up in this thing. You're like, oh, okay, great. So you're gonna see 3, and like maybe see 4, and then all of a sudden another week goes by and you're having the same conversation. Who's been there, right? Who's been there? And all of a sudden you allow people in our lives to talk with us with emotion, right, and using emotional language instead of numeric language. And that's the interesting part about this. And so what we have to understand is that the minute we can move from that, our businesses become much more effective. It allows us to monitor it from a distance. The thing with that I had to do that was very difficult in the beginning, but now has turned to be one of the greatest gifts, right? I mean, a lot of times in our life, our greatest problems have turned into greatest gifts for us, is that Vermont literally has more cows than people. And so when we ran into limits of thinking about, and business-wise, what we could do here, we had to go out to Maine first. And when we jumped in over to Maine, part of that is we had to learn how to operate in another state without a license, right? How to operate our state financially with rules and regulations and all that stuff. So now we're in 9 states now, and we've been, just for example, in the past 60 days, I think we brought on 33 people in the HRG, and part of that growth. So when you learn that ability, you have to have standards to be able to monitor teams without being there. And the interesting thing is I've only ever been to one of our locations, right? I've been to Maine, and that's it. I've never been in any other location. So how do you hire the people that you need? And so we're gonna walk through that, right, of what it's like to have the standards, what it's like to have the accountability in there, and then what it's like to use the models and systems, and what does compensation look like, what do those things look like for hiring the people. So whether or not you're individual or you've built the team and you want to start expanding, or maybe you've expanded and you want to be able to bring it on even further, we'd love to break that down for you even further, which we're excited about. And then obviously, self-mastery, and will hold yourself accountable. This is where the emotional fitness comes in. You have to understand that business building, right? And this is a course for advanced people, right? This is a course for people who want advancement in their self and their growth and for their team. And it's just a high-level leadership course, which is why you guys are on this. And I want to use that language when we're talking with you guys to really elevate you guys to the next level. Business building is not easy. And ordinary success and extraordinary success look like the same for a long period of time. It looks like the same for 5 to 7 years, research shows. So how many years can you continue to build an organization and stomach it? How do you stay emotionally fit enough so that you can continue to weather the storms, right? How do you do that? And it's hard, right? There's a grind, and that's what a lot of us, and there's this no man's land feeling that you get once you start a business. But here's the really magical part of all of this, is just when you think you can't take any more, it breaks, and you hit your geometric curve, and then it feels like you're on this roller coaster ride that's just purely that you don't even know how it happened, and it seemed to go by really fast. That's the really magical part about building business. And think about what it does for your life, but for the people's lives around you. And that's the point, that's the journey that we're all on, and that's the experience that we're looking for when you start holding yourself accountable to those standards. And so when you start putting all those things into place, so when you start breaking free, right, of mediocrity, when you start learning how to use fear, you start breaking into models and systems, we start looking at what leverage and really what opportunity looks like. And we have this term sometimes, people feel that leverage is a negative word, or it feels like I'm just dropping things on it. But really what it is a better way to look at it is what's the opportunity, which is why when you hire people, it's like you're giving them the opportunity. Because the opportunity is yeah, they come into your organization and how big can they get. So my mission statement, and one of the things we'll go over in depth is to grow through life's experiences by thinking bigger every day and creating a world large enough for all of my team members to exceed any goal imaginable. So every day I wake up and how do I create freedom in my world by creating such a world large enough that nobody has to leave? Think about it. It's ultimately what Gary did, isn't it? It's the reason why he actually started doing expansions. And so the reason why he actually started expanding was for people like Ben, Kenny, and Tim Heil, and Seth, and all these folks that are doing amazing things to never leave their organization. He woke up and realized that real estate's about to change. And he's seen it faster than anybody else has. And he said people are going to start building massive businesses. And he wants somebody to overtake Keller Williams. He wants somebody inside his organization to be more profitable. He's driving for that, and I know somebody will. And that's the cool part. It's probably going to be you. And so that's the reason why we're putting this together here, is for that. So that's the really neat thing about this. So it's 10 weeks. It's limitless. We're going to continue to push it hard. And today we have a $100 off coupon for people for doing that. But in addition to that, and Chris doesn't even know I'm going to do this, but and probably going to get into some trouble for it. But we're going to give away our entire business book, which is our models, our systems, for not just expansion, but for all the business entities. We have a construction development firm that we have over 700 units in the pipeline right now, capital company, and all the principles, all the manuals, everything that we've had. If you sign up today, you're going to get all of that information in addition to some of the other HRG stuff that we're going to have. So I hope that maps okay with that, but I wanted to make sure I give you guys an extra bit for it. I just got a message. I have like 3 minutes left for questions. So I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts, questions about the class, how it's going to go. It starts next Tuesday. It's an hour long. And it literally goes from for 10 weeks. There's 2 bonus calls. One of my director of growth is coming on to talk purely recruiting. So if you're recruiting, if you've never recruited before, she's going to do a special session for you guys that I wanted to put in there so that you guys can see what it's like to hear from somebody who was the #1 growth team leader in all of North Central last year. She's now our director of expansion, which is really cool. Our director of growth for that. So she's going to do a call. Our operations person has been with me for almost 5 years, who handles all the operations for our organization for HRG is going to do, and for if you're the admin, we're going to have that entire call so they can teach you and give you all the models and systems that we're doing for that. So what kind of questions? It's the cost is $6.99, and it's broken down into 3 components, but it is $100 off, so it's $5.99.
Yeah. And Adam, if you don't mind switching to the next slide, these guys can see the sign-up information, how to get the links, and all of that. We've got quite a few asking for that as well.
Okay. So one of the things is, and I'll jump to that in 1 second, is our belief is there's always a way. So you're going to hear this a lot. So when people come to you and they say, "Look, I've got a problem," and you go, "Great, and what's our belief? There's always a way." Then what's your move? And so you start training people to get to there. So here's how you sign up. Here's the discount code for that. Yeah, Chris, you see other questions that are popping up there?
Yes, we've got quite a few. One we want to make sure to address, if you've already signed up, just email us at fasttrack, FASTTRACK at KW.com, and let us know you want to apply the discount from Adam's webinar, and we'll be happy to credit that to you. Another question, will all 12 weeks be recorded? And Adam, that is the plan, right?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Let's see what else we've got. A lot about the cost. You just covered that. Yeah. One of the things I think would be good for you to hit on, towards the beginning, we had Sam say emotional language versus numerical language, and that was a big aha for them. So maybe something you could talk a little more on?
Yeah, I mean, and hopefully we covered a little bit, and we'll actually go into real in-depth with this. But remember, emotional language is using language that we all can define in our own way. So when I use the example good, right, Chris? So if I say how you doing is good, well, what does good mean, right? Or how does, oh, great, or how does, is a fantastic day, or is a shitty day, or whatever it was. Those emotional language in there is not something that we can understand together. But if I say 10, We all know what 10 means, right? There's no question, it's black and white versus gray. And a lot of us will go to that emotional language truly to make ourselves feel more significant. And by the way, when we're in an accountability session, we as leaders like to hear the emotional conversation because we may not want to actually look at the actual results of it. And so what happens is we end up going too far with understanding and hearing about emotion versus actually looking at exactly what it is for the numeric conversation. We say, well, how many pendings did you get? Well, I've got a couple of signs that are out there, right? I mean, you guys have probably all heard this. I've got a couple that are out there. Great. Well, so you're going to come together. You're going to get like 3, and then you go, well, the difference is you go, well, how many do you have pending? And they're going to give you, well, it's got this, and you go, well, great, that's awesome. How many do you have pending? And they're going to say none. Or 1. Because here's the thing, when you hit the result, if your goal is 3 and I say, how many do you have pending, what do you say? 3, 4. There's no story. Remember, you either have a story or have a result. And most of us, the story can be absolutely true, right? It can be very true. But most of us allow the story to occur into our business lives and our personal lives way too often. And so how do you use a model and system around that to make sure that your business starts to become in a numeric conversation so that you all have clarity on what the definement is of things. Even defining, like in our organization, we just define what profitability means. Because profitability for a location doesn't mean $1, right? It means a certain number of profitability. So clarity on numbers is something that is very, very important. And again, this is not just for big teams. It's really designed so that if you're an individual agent, I want you on there, right? You're gonna learn from this. Even if you don't want to build it today or tomorrow, you're gonna start understanding what it's like and getting a framework. And we're gonna give you this to be able to really start embracing yourself, to start thinking about what it would be like to be on a team, right? To be like to start growing a team. And ultimately, the teams is where we're going to go. Look, we're going to wake up in real estate in 10 years from now. There may be 600 people in a market center. There's going to be 15 teams that are doing it. And hopefully one of the teams is yours, right? Because that's ultimately where we're going. You see more people join a team last year and end their time in real estate. That's the trend. Get ahead of it. And that's what this organization is about. That's why I'm doing this, right, is to get people to understand that this is what business building is about. It's about growth. It's about your growth. And it's about building something that can outlast you. Any other questions, Chris, that you're seeing?
Fantastic. Just confirming for everyone, they want to know when it begins. It's next Tuesday. The time is 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. Central Time. Lots of those are great questions. And let's see, lots of can't wait for this to start, Adam. Lots of great jobs. So MAPS is super grateful to you for that. And that is basically what I am seeing. Any last questions, anybody? All right. Well, okay. Becca's asking for the link to sign up, so I'll text that. It should be on the screen, Becca. It's mapscoaching.kw.com/BWL. If you miss a session, they are recorded. And how do we get the business materials he mentioned? You sign up today, and we will make sure they are emailed to you. Adam, got any last thoughts?
This is a journey, and I'm excited to be on this journey with you guys, and it's truly a privilege to be able to serve you all. It really is, and I'm planning on playing completely full out. I want my team when they're on playing full out. I want you guys to play full out in this. This is going to be a class like no other. It's going to be the weekly accountability that we need to make some significant changes in our lives in every area of it, and I'm excited to change and be on this journey with you guys as well. So I appreciate everyone allowing me to serve you guys.
Adam, thank you so much. MAPS, it's such an honor for us to be doing this program with you, and a blessing to every life you're going to touch. As you've already mentioned, there's hundreds of people interested in this program already. It's going to be fantastic. And thank you so much for your time today and for the 10 weeks coming forward.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Bye.